This bride thought the day of her wedding would be the best day of her life. But instead, it turned into a nightmare when her soon-to-be husband chose to humiliate her in front of everyone. It was so bad that she decided to cancel the wedding completely. But then, her mom told her something that changed everything. This day could have been so wonderful. Elizabeth, the bride-to-be, had been looking forward to it for months. She and her fiancé, Tom, had planned it perfectly, and it felt like nothing could go wrong. Beth, as her friends called her, was getting ready for the final rehearsal when it happened. After the wedding rehearsal, Beth was still baffled by how a single, simple event ruined such a wonderful day. "I can't believe he did this. Everything was amazing up to that point, and he never gave me any indication that he felt this way," Beth said, crying to her friend after the rehearsal ended. Yes, all of this misery had to do with Tom, who up until this point always behaved like the perfect boyfriend. He was supportive, caring, and always kind to Beth, but all of that was about to change. Beth's father called her to join them at the final rehearsal, the stage for this major catastrophe. When Beth arrived in her beautiful white gown, everyone was already there, and in the center of them was her fiancé, Tom. He waited patiently for her arrival. The couple wanted one simple practice run with just their direct family and closest friends to get everything right for later. But then Tom started to speak. Tom took the microphone and addressed everyone. Beth was still happy at that point. She looked at her fiancé with loving eyes, wondering what he was going to say to her and everyone there. She was a bit older than him, but their love was pure and genuine from the beginning. But was it though? Because the moment Tom got into his speech, the words that left his mouth proved the complete opposite of this. They weren't kind and loving at all. Instead, they were harmful, unnecessary insults that would ruin the day and their relationship completely. Tom's comments started out innocent at first, but that didn't last long. The groom didn't have a written speech planned like Beth had. Instead, he stated that he was going to freestyle this presentation, and that was when it started. The neatly suited Tom made some funny jokes about how they met, but then it suddenly got really personal. Beth figured his remarks were meant to be funny, but she and everyone present definitely did not get the joke. Tom started talking about their age difference, telling everyone that he never thought he would marry his grandmother. She was only 9 years older than him, so that made no sense. Then he continued. He made fun of Beth's fluctuating weight, even going as far as comparing her to a whale at some point due to all her blubber. His humiliation, intended or not, got worse with every remark. He even finished his speech with the following words, "Let's just get married now, before I change my mind." Tom smiled as he placed the microphone on the table, and the joke sort of landed with his own friends, who smiled awkwardly. But the rest of the attendants, including Beth, were left in shock. They all looked at the groom with open mouths and wide eyes, and then Beth started crying. Beth couldn't believe her fiancé would do such a horrible thing. Why would he humiliate her like that on their special day? The shock in Beth's body prevented her from moving, but her mind kept racing. He did it in front of all her family and friends, and he did it like it was nothing. Tom didn't realize the impact his joke had on Beth. He just smiled and looked at his friends, who talked amongst themselves. The wedding table was weirdly silent, but Tom figured they could just go about the rest of the wedding. Elizabeth, on the other hand, had other plans. After Tom sat down again, he saw his bride rise from her chair. The shocked face had turned off and was replaced by an expression of anger. The poor woman picked up the microphone and prepared to make her own statement. She thanked everyone for coming, but this wedding was over. Yes, I'm not making a joke in bad taste like my so-called fiancé was. I hereby cancel this wedding. Thank you all for coming. Goodbye. Beth looked at Tom with disgust and told him that their relationship was over. She wanted nothing to do with him anymore. How dare you? Tom was now the one in shock. He first thought that his bride was joking, which would make sense since he had just done the same thing. But pretty quickly, it became clear that Beth was very, very serious. There was no punchline in this story. The bride just dropped the mic and ran off crying. Beth's sister followed her away from the table. But by the time she caught up with Elizabeth, she was already in her room with the door locked tightly. and there she stayed for hours, crying her eyes out. Beth only contacted one person during that time, her father, who she called from behind closed doors. She instructed him to keep Tom away at all costs, and that instruction he followed to the letter. Beth didn't see her fiancé again that day. Luckily, we hadn't bought a house together yet, or even worse, had kids. This man isn't worth my love, but how could I have been so blind? In the weeks following the failed wedding, Beth became very depressed. Tom was all she knew, and now it was gone. She couldn't be among people, but she was also unable to be alone. That's why her sister invited Beth to stay in her guest bedroom. But there, the door remained mostly locked as well. Those depressing days behind closed doors were probably the worst days of Beth's life. She felt alone in Tom's betrayal and guilty about taking space and energy away from her sister. And still, she did not understand why it all happened in the first place. But then, suddenly, change happened. Eventually, Beth's sister got her out of that slump. She was kind and patient with her, but also stern when she needed to be. And it was a good thing that she did, because after some harsh words from her loving relative about taking back your own life, Beth got out of her funk. She used the breakup as motivation to focus more on herself. She started eating more healthily, going to the gym 4 times a week, and focusing more on developing her career. It was mind-blowing to see how much Beth's life turned around with just a little bit of guided focus. And all of Beth's hard work paid off. It wasn't long before the positive changes in her life made a real impact. The revitalized and motivated woman excelled at her job. She worked hard, and her boss took notice, giving Beth a promotion after a few months. But that wasn't all. Beth's body was also thankful for the change in attitude. Her frequent visits to the gym showed an increase in strength and condition, not to mention a serious loss in her waist size. The 43-year-old Beth had never been in better shape, and that confidence was on full display on a daily basis. After a full year of single life, Beth lost over 50 pounds. She was happy with herself for the first time in a long while. But Beth did not know that a huge, nasty surprise awaited her around the corner. Her mother would present her with it, and it would change her life forever. It was exactly 1 year and 1 month after her wedding day when the news hit her. Beth was working in her garage. She had discovered a love for making ceramic items and had just started turning a large vase when, suddenly, the doorbell rang. "Who could this be?" she said while cleaning her hands. Beth dried her hands and slowly walked to the front door of her house. The door was mostly made of glass, so she could see that her mother stood outside. Beth wasn't expecting her visit, so she was a bit surprised to see her standing there with sandwiches in her hand. "Mom, what's up?" Elizabeth's mother always brought her food when there was bad news to be told, so this worried her a bit. Beth's mother didn't answer, but simply walked to the kitchen and made a plate of food for the two of them. She complimented Beth on her house, and they ate lunch together. But then the main reason for her mother's visit came up. "I saw Tom in town today, honey." Beth thought that this news was kind of weird. Why would she care about this information? But then Beth saw her mother's worried eyes and got curious. "What is it about Tom, Mom?" Beth saw that her mother was trying to tell her something important. "I saw Tom, and he's not doing too well." Beth didn't understand why she had to care. Elizabeth's mother understood this attitude toward her ex-fiancé, and it wasn't something that needed Beth's attention if she didn't want to. "But it's an understatement when I say he's doing bad, honey. Tom is homeless, and he's living on the street. I have seen him begging for food all week." Beth was in shock after her mother revealed this news. What had happened to that man after their wedding that caused this type of downfall? It was very confusing to her, because deep inside, she also felt like he deserved this sorrow. "Maybe it's something I need to check out for myself," she thought. Elizabeth asked her mother where she would be able to find Tom. It was a question that was easily answered because her mother saw Tom every day at the exact same spot. "He's at the corner of Lancaster Crossing. Don't freak out when you see him. It's pretty shocking," Beth's mother stated. The next day, Beth set out to find Tom. She parked about a block away and walked the final part to add dramatic tension. As she stepped closer, yes, Elizabeth did not have the best intentions when it came to finding him. This was her chance for revenge, her chance to laugh at his expense. But as Beth got closer and saw Tom for the first time, something happened inside her. Tom sat against a large concrete bank building. He looked dirty, and he was desperately shaking his cup, probably because he was hungry. Seeing him wasn't satisfying at all, and Beth's demeanor quickly changed. She felt sorry for him. A sad feeling welled up in her heart as she approached the poor man. What could have happened for him to fall this deep? It was an interesting switch of emotions, and by the time she reached the homeless man, curiosity toward his story overwhelmed her. Beth greeted Tom, but the poor man did not recognize her at first because of her extreme physical transformation. He just looked up and kept shaking his coin cup, but Beth wasn't going to leave it at that. She placed her tote bag on the ground and squatted down next to Tom. Tom looked at the transformed Beth, confused, but then she started talking, and his expression changed instantly. "Beth? Oh my God, I didn't recognize you at first. You've changed so much and you look amazing." Beth smiled and said, "You've changed too, but not for the better. What happened?" The two of them started talking, and Tom explained that the drama surrounding their wedding was the start of his downfall. It impacted his life in such a negative way that everything else spiraled out of control. "But before I tell you the story, I have to apologize for my actions that day," Tom said. "Before I gave the speech, I was messing around with my friends, and they dared me to roast you a bit during the rehearsal. It was meant to be funny and lighthearted, and in my head, it seemed innocent enough, but it turned out to be the completely wrong thing to do." Tom stated that he quickly regretted his actions, but by then, the damage had already been done. Beth's father denied him access to his bride. He couldn't apologize, and Beth's relatives had filmed the entire roast, and that particular fact would be Tom's downfall. It was Elizabeth's cousin who posted the video online, and after that, everything spiraled out of control. At first, Tom did not realize what that footage, which now floated online, was causing. He was too busy being depressed after losing the love of his life. He never wanted to lose Beth and regretted everything. But the punishment for his heinous crime went far beyond the private quarters of their wedding guest book. The video posted by your cousin went viral, and pretty soon, the news reached my boss. Tom's employer was a strong feminist woman, and she did not want a woman hater as an employee. Tom lost his job just a few days after the wedding rehearsal. His boss made sure that no other employer would hire him. She slandered his name, making it impossible for him to get a job. Eventually, payments fell behind, and Tom lost his house. I managed to stay with friends for a while, but after a while, they were unable to cope with my depressive state. I lost most of them in the first few months, and the rest followed after. Beth couldn't believe this heartache. It was a bit his own fault, but still. And then Beth did something she never expected. "Come with me to my place." "I'll help you," she said. Tom was in shock at first. He thought she was joking, mocking him in his weakened state, but Beth was genuine. She guided Tom to her home and allowed him to shower and put on clean clothes. "They're my brothers," she said. For some strange reason, Beth felt responsible for Tom's well-being. The ex-bride took care of her ex-groom and made him feel alive again. It was nice to see the positive change in him, Elizabeth later admitted. Their bond started to grow after a while, and they eventually became the most unlikely friends. Tom and Beth saw a whole new side of each other, one that relied much more on mutual respect. They had met years ago, when they were much younger and immature. Now, they were adults who had gone through hardship and recovered from it. It made their bond stronger than ever. And then something even more miraculous happened. From the ashes of their failed relationship, a friendship arose, and that friendship eventually blossomed into a new love for each other. It took some convincing to get both families to believe in it too, but in the end, everyone was on board again. And last week, exactly 2 years after that horrible first wedding day debacle, a second wedding occurred. It was a wedding that consisted of 2 completely different people in body, mind, and spirit, and the 2 of them could not have been happier. And this time, the ceremony went perfectly.